For weeks, all the town could talk about was the circus. It was the topic of much happy debate at dinner parties, and mothers brimmed with excitement at after-school events. The grand traveling circus, with all its outrageous Ferris wheels, spinning rides, sweet treats, freak show, and, of course, its precious collectible statues. The coveted statues, famous for thousands of miles. The grand traveling circus! As the sun set the night before the Grand Circus, all the fathers kissed their wives, hugged their children, and left their houses. They congregated in the streets carrying high-powered flashlights and waited for all the fathers to be accounted for. At last, they clicked on their flashlights and headed to the center of town, laughing and slapping 5. Every father in town met in the city square with flashlights beaming. They sang one final song in unison.
With a row-ho-ho and a rum-tum-tum, race a Ferris wheel high with cotton candy in our tum.
And then let out an outrageous cheer, happy to welcome the circus. When the cheer finally died down, the first truck rolled into town. The truck was followed by a bus packed with performers, followed by another truck carrying locked-up cattle cars full of circus freaks and imbeciles. Trucks carried tent poles, tarps, and ride after ride, broken down into pieces so they could be put together. The fathers ran in a pack to the trucks and welcomed them with a fair share of hip, hip, hoorays. The circus organizers, clowns, and freaks alike got out of their trucks and their boxcars, greeting each father in town with a happy handshake. Once the handshake line ended, hours into the night, the fathers helped unload the trucks and the imbeciles and set up the circus overnight in the city square. Proud laughter and happy conversation echoed off the trees through the city streets. The next morning, mothers woke their children early to bathe them. They dressed their children in their finest church clothes and took them out to the front porches. At once, all the mothers in the town stood on the porches with their children, all dressed smart, happy, beaming with excitement for the circus. One by one, the fathers, sluggish with exhaustion but proud of a hard night's work, inspected the children. They played happy tricks on their sons, saying they were far too dirty to enjoy the circus. With a laugh, fathers would clap their sons on their backs, ending the ruse. Fathers dropped down on their knees in front of their daughters and inspected their outfits. "What a fine woman you're becoming," more than one father could be heard saying. And, at long last, the fathers told the mothers that the children passed inspections with flying colors, setting them loose towards the city square. An excited energy hung over the city streets. Ah, the circus! The woman flooded into the circus with a child in each hand. "You be good now," each mother said in her own way, and let the children run about the grounds. The women buzzed with anticipation, anxiously waiting for the gift shop to open so they may receive their coveted statues. Children squealed riding the merry-go-rounds, were captivated by men on stilts, laughed hilariously as clowns plied their trade, and celebrated together when even the least of them won ring toss and greedily received a prize. To say the atmosphere was ecstatic would be an understatement. It was the circus, the Grand Circus that came once but every 10 years. The children met with their mothers for lunch. They packed long picnic benches as they gorged on corn dogs and cotton candy. Fizzy drinks delighted their tongues, and sweet candy stuck their hands to the tables. As lunch wrapped up, mothers cleaned their children with handkerchiefs wetted with spit.
"Attention, police!"
A goofy clown chortled over the loudspeakers lining the circus grounds.
"The gift shop is now open. One free statue for every child."
The women shot up from their seats and clapped excitedly. The statue giveaway! It had finally come! The moment they had all been waiting for! The gem of the circus! Mothers took their children by the hand and led them to the back of the park where the gift shop awaited them. So well behaved were the children that they hardly protested the shopping trip. Great Ferris wheels and tricks and games awaited them after the excursion, so the children went along, patient and content. As they got closer, a clown shouted through a cardboard megaphone,
"Fine collectible memorabilia for the dear mothers of this fine city."
The mothers formed a line at the entrance of the gift shop. It was a large, red tent towering high into the sky. The ropes securing it in place shuddered in the wind. Above the entrance was a sign that read simply, "Children," and pointed up. The clown shouted through the megaphone at the moms. His painted-on smile was emphasized by an even larger, real-life smile, with bright red lips covering dark yellow teeth.
Come one, come all, through the magic curtain.
2 men on stilts stood at the entrance. They let the first mother through the tent, then stood sentry, blocking the next mother from entering until it was her turn. The next mother waited patiently, smiling like a cartoon rabbit. The first mother to be granted passage began the long journey up the stairs. Her children's little legs grew weak as they climbed stair after stair. When they complained, their mother encouraged them. "We're almost there, my treasures, just a little further." And with that, they reached the top of the staircase. A man covered in fur with features like a wolf was waiting for her, dressed in a smart brown suit and holding a clipboard. Behind him was a giant velvet curtain. "Name?" he asked. "Branson," the mother exclaimed proudly. "Number of children?" "2," she happily screeched. "Drop the curtain," the wolf man shouted. The velvet curtain dropped, revealing a magician and 2 identical, mustachioed strongmen in matching tutus. Behind them were 2 steel dog cages displayed on 5-foot-high platforms.
Come up,
The magician beckoned.
I will make you disappear.
He chuckled. The children excitedly ran towards the magician, but were quickly grabbed by the strong men. They laughed at first, and then yelped under the strong men's grip.
"Let me go, you're hurting my arm,"
the boy was heard yelling. The strong men lifted the children onto their respective platforms and stuffed them into the dog cages, locking the doors. The cages shook and the children screamed.
Hocus pocus, fragistoni-docious,
The magician yelled. The platforms lowered and disappeared under the floor as the children screamed and shook the bars, dropping out of sight. The screams suddenly went silent. All the while, the magician danced around the stage. Slowly, the platforms rose back up with a pneumatic wheeze, dripping with wet concrete like cake batter. Inside the cages, the children too dripped with concrete, turning into stone as they dried. In a few minutes, they were stone. The strong men chipped the concrete off the platforms, hosed down the cages, unlocked the doors, and pried out the solidified children. A woman with lobster claws for hands pushed a wheelbarrow onto the stage. The strong men carefully placed the statued children into the wheelbarrow, and the lobster woman pushed the wheelbarrow away. The mother screamed with exquisite delight. "Exit to the right. You'll see a big door that says exit," explained the wolf man lamely. "It leads to a fun slide. While you slide back down, our craftsmen put the finishing touches on your children. We'll load them into your car at no extra charge." The mother clapped, jumping up and down. "Send the next one up," the wolf man commanded into a walkie-talkie. He directed the mother in front of him to leave. One by one, the mothers went through the curtain, climbed the stairs, greeted the moody wolf man, and had their children turned into statues. Each mother danced and clapped when she saw her children as statues for the first time, as her flesh and blood dried and suffocated in their shells. When the mothers returned home that night to their empty houses, their husbands waited for them in easy chairs, smoking cigars and reading the newspaper as the radio played. "Did you pick out a good one?" they'd ask. "Honey, it's wonderful, just wonderful," each woman would respond. "Well, let me see for myself," each father would smirk. His wife would lead him to the car, and they'd unload the concrete statues. For months, the couples had each other over to show off where they displayed their entombed children. Some mothers placed their children in the garden, where birds shat on their shoulders, ivy strangled their tiny, hard limbs. Other mothers put them in the windows to fend off would-be burglars. Some mothers used their children as doorstops, and some fathers used their children to hold up workbenches or tables for toy train sets. But inevitably, the couples would go tired of the statues. Within the next 2 years, each statue would find itself covered in dust in a basement, entangled in spider webs in attics, or smashed to pieces in the backyard when their fathers came home from an overnight drunk. Over time, the couples would begin to miss their children. They would henceforth have intercourse, repopulating the town with eager, laughing children. And in no time at all, the circus would return.
The